But can I just ask you a question? A lot of the stuff I've been reading has been recommending, because of the huge number of studies that you need to look through, that it's advisable that people work in teams with 2 or 3 or 4 people working on a topic. How would that work?
Yes, so that's basically the student and the supervisor. They basically say minimum 2 people should work on a systematic review. So usually, and actually there's 3, because the librarian works very closely with you as well. So if you miss something, the librarian will pick it up, or if you speak to your supervisor about it. So let me give you a good example. A student of mine is doing gender responsiveness amongst queer individuals in substance use training. She's doing a systematic review on it, but I'm actually doing pilot studies on it in all the provinces. And so I noticed that she didn't find my article, or she didn't list my article in one of her findings. So when she searched, she saw my article there, but she didn't include it. So I asked her, but why didn't you include this? So normally supervisors who know the topic and they see what students come back with, like the articles that they come back with, they'll notice if there's gaps, and then they'll ask the student, why didn't you find so-and-so's work, or whatever, because they would know who the experts are. And if the student didn't find that data, sometimes students take shortcuts, and then they just do a normal desktop review. They don't follow the steps, and you can pick that up very quickly because you know your field.
So can I ask you to just talk through that example of your student who was looking at Xhosa
and Cradock, yeah. So she's looking at Xhosa. My student is looking at Xhosa culture and how substance use is impacting on their psychological well-being. And so she's looking for articles on that.
Now, presumably there's very few articles. I'm presuming that there are very few articles that look at that specific intersection.
Exactly.
Of
so she's doing.
Yes. So would she then look more broadly and?
No, she wouldn't. She would actually, you have to state what you find. So what she'll do is she would do a scoping review. I didn't mention this, but I'm sure people know that there are more than 10 different types of systematic reviews. So a scoping review is basically a review that scopes out the literature. It's not an intensive systematic review because you know that it hasn't been done before. And you know this because, Xhosa culture is only South African. So you wouldn't find the Xhosa culture in Europe. So you would only look within South Africa, and you could possibly say Nguni in your search. You can change the Nguni tribes or whatever. Search, but you can use a scoping method, which is basically just you going out and seeing, systematically checking what has ever been done on this. So there would be no date involved. Usually we try and keep it up until, at least 10 or 5 years ago that, studies were done. But with something as specific to South Africa as her topic, we would go, with no years, because people might have studied it in the 1950s or 60s, and then that could be included.
So that's very good advice. The parameters you set for inclusion and exclusion, to a large extent, be determined by the nature of the problem. And in her case, she would need to go way beyond 10 years. How many? In a very specific example, how many articles would she end up with?
Well, she hasn't done the review yet. She's really struggling. She's a PhD student, but she hasn't been doing research in a very long time. She's a clinician, and it's difficult for clinicians to do research, let alone a systematic review. That's so complicated. So she's only she's busy with her protocol at the moment, and she hasn't gotten to the search criteria or anything. I'm going like step by step with her. So first do the introduction, then we do, the context.
Would you advise that to supervisors to actually
yes
the student and work step by step rather than letting them run too far ahead in the wrong direction?
Yes, and then they take so long, and then they stay away so long, and you don't know what's happening. So with my PhD students and my master students, I have them on WhatsApp, so that whenever they have a question, they quickly send me a message, and I can respond quickly, because it's such a difficult task to do. And if you go on and do, your own nonsense, it takes out time of your research, your entire research. Like, I have a master student who struggles with conceptualization, and this is also another thing. If a student cannot conceptualize something, that student will find systematic reviews very difficult. Can you say a little bit more about that? So conceptualizing in the sense of trying to wrap your head around what a methodology is supposed to look like, what steps are involved, and how you write it out, how you write it up, what thinking goes into it. So they can easily talk to me and tell me what they're supposed to do, but when it comes to writing, they take about a month or so to get back to me. And when they get back to me, they haven't written anything because they don't know how to put it down in words. And these are mostly people who are second language speakers. I don't have problems with conceptualizing, research projects with first language speakers. It's mostly the second or third language speakers that struggle to put things down into words.
And then, Liezille, just to go back to your student's example again, let's say that she's finished her study, she's got however many articles, 10 or 20 or however many articles, all of which meet the criteria of it being related to Xhosa people, it being related to substance abuse, and it being related to the Cradock area. And then she would look for themes, and those themes, what let's just use it as a hypothetical and assume we've got 20 articles in front of us. What are the kinds of themes that she might be looking for?
She's doing a systematic, so the whole reason of doing a systematic review, whether it's a scoping review, an umbrella review, it doesn't matter what review. The purpose of the review is to sort of help you build a fully fledged research project around a particular topic, but you don't want to do it yet because you first want to see what has been done. You don't want to duplicate studies. You don't want to, duplicate what's out there already. But in the case of the specific Xhosa culture in Cradock, what she would then do is she will look at Xhosa communities, maybe in Cape Town, in, other places where there are a large amount of Xhosa speaking people, and then she would look for her inclusion criteria within those studies, and those studies will be a benchmark for her to develop her interview protocol when she actually does her qualitative research project. So she will then say the systematic review is the first part of my PhD, and it will inform my research project's protocol. So it would inform the methodologies of these studies that I've collected, will help me to set up my interview questions or my methodology section for my research project.
And then I see in the medical field, often the systematic review is almost an end unto itself, so that it's not preliminary to a further study, but it's used to kind of either show gaps, which other people could then pick up with further study, or to critique methodology or bias.
Yes, and say that doesn't work in this context, so this is how we're going to change it. But specifically for PhD students, this is systematically important because we're supposed to create new knowledge with a PhD in the field. And the only way to do that is to find what the gaps are in the field. And the systematic review is the best way to do it, rather than a desktop, because a desktop review would, not be so systematic or so strategic to show you where the gaps are, if that makes sense.
If I usually, everyone does a desktop review for any piece of research, but we don't justify, we don't spend as much time justifying why we looked at this piece of literature and not that one, or why we're focusing on this school of thought and we've got a blind spot to that school of thought.